Ambassador Sarah Chen adjusted her flowing diplomatic robes as she walked through the crystal corridors of the Galactic Council Station. The translucent walls sparkled with embedded starlight, casting rainbow patterns that danced across her peaceful expression. Other delegates nodded respectfully as she passed. The tall, graceful Altarians with their feathered crests, the crystalline Zephyrite whose bodies chimed softly with each step, and the wise Centauri elders, whose ancient eyes held millennia of knowledge. For 300 years, humanity had held the honored position of mediator species in the Galactic Federation. They were the ones called upon when tensions arose, when conflicts needed gentle resolution, when wounded hearts required healing words. Humans possessed a unique gift that no other species seemed to share: the ability to understand pain and transform it into peace. Ambassador Chen called a melodic voice behind her. Sarah turned to see Lyrics, a healer prime from the Andorian collective. His blue-tinged skin glowed softly with the bioluminescent patterns that indicated deep respect. "We have received word that you will be mediating the territorial dispute between the Kraxi and the Vorthan Empire." Sarah smiled, her expression radiating the calm confidence that had made humanity beloved across the galaxy. "Of course, Healer Prime. Violence serves no one. We will find a path that honors both peoples. You humans never cease to amaze us," Lyric said, his head tilting in the Andorian gesture of wonder. "How do you always see solutions where others see only conflict? Your species has prevented 17 wars in the past decade alone. Perhaps because we understand that everyone is fighting their own battles," Sarah replied gently. "When we recognize the pain behind the anger, compassion becomes possible." As they continued down the corridor, Sarah reflected on humanity's role in the galaxy. 3 centuries ago, when Earth had first made contact with the Galactic Federation, humans had been terrified they would be seen as primitive warmongers. After all, their planet was still recovering from the devastating global wars that had nearly destroyed civilization. But something remarkable had happened during those dark years. Humanity had looked into the abyss of their own capacity for destruction and recoiled in horror. They had chosen a different path. The survivors rebuilt their world on principles of radical pacifism, emotional intelligence, and conflict resolution. By the time alien ships arrived in Earth's solar system, they found a species dedicated to peace above all else. The galactic community had welcomed them with open arms. Here was a young species that seemed to instinctively understand the value of life, the importance of harmony, the beauty of cooperation. While other species had evolved beyond physical conflict through technology or natural selection, humans had chosen peace through conscious moral evolution. They became the galaxy's counselors, its mediators, its gentle guides toward understanding. Human colonies throughout the galaxy served as neutral meeting grounds. Human ambassadors resolved disputes that had raged for centuries. Human teachers helped other species understand concepts like forgiveness, empathy, and reconciliation. Sarah entered the main council chamber, where representatives from dozens of worlds awaited her arrival. The Kraxi delegation sat rigid in their environmental suits, their insectoid features hidden behind reflective visors. Across from them, the Vorthan representatives displayed their traditional war paint markings, though Sarah knew these were now merely ceremonial, as the Vorthans had abandoned actual warfare generations ago. "Honored delegates," Sarah began, her voice carrying the trained warmth that marked all human diplomats. "We gather today not as adversaries, but as neighbors seeking understanding. Both the Kraxi Collective and the Vorthan Empire have legitimate claims and concerns regarding the Nexus system. Our goal is not to determine a winner, but to find a solution that strengthens both our peoples." The Kraxi delegate, Speaker Zik-7, made the sharp clicking sound that indicated skepticism in their language. The Vorthans expand beyond their borders, without consideration for established mining rights. How can there be accommodation when there is theft? General Korth of the Vorthans bristled, his ceremonial tusks gleaming. The Nexus system has been unclaimed space for 2,000 years. Our people need new worlds to flourish. We take nothing that belongs to others. Sarah raised her hand in the human gesture for patience. Over the centuries, This simple movement had become recognized throughout the galaxy as a call for peace and reflection. Both perspectives hold truth. Speaker Zix 7. Your people have indeed invested significant resources in cataloging the Nexus system's mineral wealth. General Korth, your people's need for expansion comes from a desire to ensure your civilization's continued prosperity. These are not opposing forces. They are complementary needs waiting for the right synthesis. For 6 hours, Sarah guided the discussion with the skill that had made humanity famous. She helped each side understand the other's cultural imperatives, translated emotional subtext across species barriers, and gradually shaped a framework where both peoples could benefit. The Kraxi would oversee mining operations, while the Vorthans would establish agricultural colonies, with shared profits funding joint research stations. As the session concluded with ceremonial exchanges of respect between former enemies, Sarah felt the familiar satisfaction of another conflict transformed into cooperation. This was humanity's gift to the galaxy. The ability to see beyond the surface of disagreement to the deeper needs that drove all sentient beings. Later, in her private quarters, Sarah connected with her husband David back on the human colony world of New Geneva. His face appeared on the quantum communicator, showing the laugh lines that 3 decades of marriage had etched around his eyes. "Another successful mediation?" he asked, noting her tired but satisfied expression. "The Kraxi-Vorthan dispute is resolved," she confirmed. Both sides seemed genuinely pleased with the outcome. It's remarkable how often the solution has been there all along, waiting for someone to help them see it. David smiled. "That's what we do best, isn't it? Help others find their better angels." Through their conversation, Sarah felt the deep contentment that came from living according to humanity's chosen path. 300 years of peaceful evolution had transformed their species into something beautiful. Natural healers, in a galaxy that still struggled with ancient conflicts and misunderstandings. Neither Sarah nor David was aware that in a distant corner of the galaxy, something was stirring that would challenge everything humanity had built. In the dark space between stars, ships were moving with predatory intent toward a small human research station called Hope's End. Dr. Marcus Webb looked up from his botanical specimens as the proximity alarms began their soft chiming. The research station orbited a newly discovered planet rich in unique plant life, and his team of 12 scientists had been cataloging species for the past 6 months. They had sent regular reports back to Earth, describing remarkable discoveries. Plants that could process radiation, flowers that generated their own light, trees whose root systems seemed to form natural quantum networks. "Probably just a supply ship arriving early," commented Dr. Lisa Patel, his research partner, as she carefully sealed another specimen container. "Though I don't remember any scheduled deliveries." Marcus frowned as he checked the station's sensors. 3 ships were approaching, but their configurations didn't match any known Federation vessel types. The hull designs were angular and aggressive, bristling with what looked like weapon arrays. His training as a civilian researcher hadn't prepared him for military analysis. But something about these ships made his skin crawl. "Lisa," he said quietly, "can you get everyone to the main lab? I think we might have a problem." The research team gathered in the central laboratory, 12 peaceful scientists whose greatest concern until that moment had been maintaining proper environmental controls for their plant samples. They watched through the main viewport as 3 warships settled into attack formation around their defenseless station. The lead ship opened a communication channel, and the main screen filled with a face that made several team members gasp. The being was clearly predatory, razor-sharp teeth, eyes like black holes, and skin that seemed to absorb light. When it spoke, its voice carried undertones that triggered primal fear responses in human hearing. "Human research station," the creature said. "You will prepare to receive boarders. Your species has something we require, and we have come to collect it." Dr. Webb stepped forward, his hands raised in the universal gesture of peace that humans had taught the galaxy. "I am Dr. Marcus Webb, Station Commander. We are a peaceful research facility conducting botanical surveys. We have no weapons, no military value. If you need something, perhaps we can discuss." The creature's laugh was like breaking glass. "Discuss?" You humans and your endless talking. We are the devourers, and we do not discuss. We take what we need from the weak. The Galactic Federation has treaties, Dr. Patel said, her voice steady despite her obvious fear. Attacking civilian researchers violates every principle of civilized conduct. There will be consequences. The Federation? The creature snarled. Those soft fools who spend their time in endless debate while the galaxy burns? We have been watching them for decades, waiting for them to show some backbone. They are weak, and their human pets are the weakest of all. The first boarding pods impacted against the station's hull with thunderous crashes. Marcus heard the seals breaking, felt the atmospheric pressure dropping. His people, botanists and xenobiologists and peaceful researchers, looked to him with terror in their eyes. Please, he said into the communicator, falling back on 3 centuries of human diplomatic tradition. We can resolve this peacefully. Whatever you need, we can find a way to provide it without violence. There's always a better solution than. The communication channel cut off as armored figures began cutting through the station's inner airlocks. Marcus could hear the distinctive whine of energy weapons powering up, could smell the ozone that preceded weapons discharge. Dr. Patel grabbed his arm. Marcus, they're not here to negotiate. They're here to kill us. For 300 years, humanity had been the galaxy's voice of peace. They had chosen gentleness over violence, understanding over dominance, cooperation over conquest. They had transformed themselves from a warlike species into something that other civilizations looked to for moral guidance. But as the first devourer rounded the corner with weapon raised toward Dr. Sarah Martinez, the youngest member of their team, something ancient stirred in Marcus Webb's chest. Something that humanity thought it had evolved past. Something that 3 centuries of peaceful development had buried deep but not destroyed. The devourer never got the chance to fire its weapon. Later, much later, when the Federation investigators arrived at Hope's End Station, they found 12 human researchers sitting quietly in their laboratory. The botanical samples remained perfectly preserved in their environmental chambers. The station's research logs showed no interruption in their careful cataloging of plant species. The investigators also found the remains of 37 devourer raiders scattered throughout the station's corridors. The alien bodies showed signs of violence so precise, so efficient, and so terrifyingly creative that several veteran Federation security officers required psychological counseling afterward. When asked what had happened, Dr. Marcus Webb looked up from his specimen catalogs with eyes that seemed somehow different than they had been before. We defended ourselves, he said simply, but the investigators knew that something far more significant had occurred. For the first time in 3 centuries, humanity had been forced to remember what they had once been. And somewhere in the depths of space, word was already beginning to spread that the galaxy's most peaceful species had just done something that defied every assumption the civilized worlds had held about them. The mask was beginning to slip, and the galaxy was about to learn that humanity's choice of peace had never meant they had forgotten how to wage war. The emergency council session convened within hours of the Hope's End incident report, reaching the Galactic Federation headquarters. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat in the witness chair, her usually serene expression troubled as she faced questions from representatives of 47-member worlds. Chancellor Vex, of the Centauri Senate, leaned forward, his ancient features creased with concern. Ambassador Chen, we need to understand what occurred at the research station. The preliminary reports are disturbing. Sarah had read those same reports during her emergency flight to the council station. 37 devourer raiders, all dead. Some had been killed with improvised weapons fashioned from laboratory equipment. Others showed signs of combat that suggested hand-to-hand fighting with beings who had natural weapons and advanced armor. Most disturbing of all, the evidence indicated that 12 unarmed human researchers had not only survived the attack, but had completely eliminated a heavily armed boarding party without suffering a single casualty. The investigators confirmed that Dr. Webb and his team acted in self-defense, Sarah said carefully. They were attacked without provocation by raiders who ignored all attempts at diplomatic resolution. Self-defense, repeated Admiral Thyrix of the Zephyrite Navy, her crystalline form chiming with agitation. Ambassador, I have reviewed combat statistics for my entire career. The Devourers are among the most dangerous predator species known. They have slaughtered entire colonies of warrior races. How does a botanical research team eliminate 37 of them without weapons or military training? The question hung in the air like a poison cloud. Sarah felt the weight of 47 species' attention, saw the doubt and growing fear in eyes that had looked upon humanity with trust and admiration for 3 centuries. Perhaps, said Speaker Zix7 of the Craxi, his voice carrying that distinctive clicking undertone. There are things about humans that we have not fully understood. Council moderator Liren, an ethereal being of pure energy who had guided Federation discussions for over a millennium, spoke with a voice that resonated through quantum frequencies. Ambassador Chen, we are not questioning humanity's right to defend itself. We are concerned about the methods and efficiency displayed. Our species have known humans as peacemakers, mediators, and healers. The events at Hope's End suggest capabilities that have never been documented or disclosed. Sarah chose her words carefully. When faced with mortal danger, any species will fight for survival. The researchers did what they had to do to protect their lives, but even as she spoke, Sarah felt the foundation of humanity's galactic reputation shifting beneath her feet. That morning, she had received a classified briefing that made her stomach turn. The investigators hadn't just found devourer corpses at Hope's End. They had found evidence of tactical thinking that suggested military expertise, weapon improvisation that indicated advanced combat engineering knowledge, and forensic evidence that some of the devourers had been killed by individuals who understood alien anatomy well enough to target specific weak points with surgical precision. Dr. Marcus Webb had given his statement calmly, explaining that he had some basic self-defense training from his youth. But the investigators had discovered that Webb's improvised weapons included a device that generated a focused electromagnetic pulse, specifically calibrated to disrupt devourer neural implants, knowledge that should have been impossible for a botanist to possess. Admiral Thyrix's form flickered with the Zephyrite equivalent of deep suspicion. Ambassador, I have ordered a review of historical Federation records regarding human involvement in conflict resolution. Some interesting patterns have emerged. Sarah's blood chilled. What kind of patterns? In every major peace negotiation where humans have been involved, the aggressive parties have suddenly become remarkably cooperative. We always attributed this to human diplomatic genius, but I am beginning to wonder if there were other factors at work. Chancellor Vex activated a holographic display showing incident reports spanning 2 centuries. The Thrakari Rebellion ended 3 days after human mediator James Park arrived on Thrakari Prime. The Gorlan Independence War. Both sides agreed to peace talks within hours of human ambassador Lisa Santos landing on the contested world. The Keth Syndicate uprising. Complete surrender. After human negotiator Robert Kim conducted what were described as intensive discussions with syndicate leadership, the pattern was undeniable, and Sarah felt sick as she recognized it. How had they been so blind? How had 47 species missed what now seemed obvious in hindsight? Speaker Zix7 vocalized a complex clicking sequence that translated as profound unease. In each case, the historical records show that violent factions became peaceful very quickly after human contact. We celebrated this as evidence of exceptional diplomatic skill. But what if these were not negotiations at all? The implications crashed through the council chamber like a gravitational wave. 3 centuries of human peacemaking, viewed through this new lens, suddenly looked very different. Every war that had been prevented, every conflict that had been resolved, every instance of humanity's celebrated diplomatic success. What if none of it had been accomplished through gentle persuasion? Council moderator Liren's energy field pulsed with algorithmic calculation patterns. I am accessing complete Federation historical databases, cross-referencing human diplomatic missions with unexplained disappearances, sudden policy reversals, and documented cases of aggressive leaders experiencing personality changes after human contact. The search took 17 seconds. When Liren spoke again, harmonics of shock colored the quantum frequencies. In the past 300 years, there have been 1,247 instances of human diplomatic intervention in potential conflicts. Cross-analysis reveals 891 documented disappearances of war faction leaders, 478 cases of aggressive commanders suddenly adopting peaceful positions after private meetings with human representatives, and 156 instances of entire military leadership structures being replaced following human mediation efforts. The council chamber fell silent. Sarah Chen, who had spent her entire career believing in humanity's genuine gift for peace, felt her worldview crumbling. She thought of every successful negotiation she had conducted, every violent leader who had suddenly seen reason after their private conversations, every military commander who had emerged from human diplomatic meetings with new perspectives on conflict resolution. Had any of it been real? Or had humanity been systematically eliminating opposition through methods so subtle and efficient that even their own diplomats hadn't realized what they were doing? Admiral Thyrix's form brightened with realization. The human colonies. Every human settlement serves as a neutral meeting ground, a place where former enemies can gather safely. But what if they serve another purpose? What if they are monitoring stations, intelligence-gathering operations designed to identify potential threats before they can develop? Chancellor Vex pulled up star map displays showing human colony locations. The pattern was clear once you knew to look for it. Human settlements weren't randomly distributed throughout Federation space. They formed a network of strategic observation points that provided coverage of every major trade route, every military installation, every government center in the galaxy. They have been watching us. Speaker Zix-7 clicked in what could only be described as fearful amazement. For 3 centuries, they have been positioned to observe every species, every government, every military development in Federation space. Sarah's communicator chimed with an urgent message from Earth. Her hands shook as she read it. More incidents were being reported across human space. A trade dispute between the Feline Consortium and the Outer Rim Collective had been resolved after human mediators met with both sides. But investigation teams were now finding evidence that 3 Feline trade princes and 2 collective war chiefs had simply vanished during the negotiations. On the colony world of Haven's Rest, local security forces had discovered a hidden facility beneath the main diplomatic center. The facility contained detailed files on every non-human visitor to the colony for the past 40 years, including biological weakness assessments, psychological profiles, and tactical recommendations for neutralizing threats. On New Geneva, archaeologists working on expanding the spaceport had unearthed what appeared to be mass graves dating back 2 centuries. Initial analysis suggested the remains belonged to representatives from various species who had come to the world for peace talks and had never returned home. But perhaps most disturbing was the report from Harmony Station, humanity's flagship diplomatic facility orbiting the galactic core. Maintenance workers had accidentally accessed a restricted section of the station's computer core and discovered files labeled contingency protocols. The files contained detailed invasion plans for every major Federation world, complete with species-specific biological weapons, targeted infrastructure attacks, and strategies for rapid conquest that could cripple galactic civilization within weeks. Sarah realized that every human diplomatic installation in the galaxy was not a center for peacemaking. They were forward military bases, positioned to strike at the heart of every Federation world simultaneously. Ambassador Chen, Council Moderator Liren said, "We need to understand what humanity's true intentions are. The evidence suggests that your species has been preparing for galactic conquest for centuries, while maintaining a facade of peaceful cooperation." Sarah's mouth went dry. "I assure you, the human government is committed to peace. These discoveries are as shocking to us as they are to you. Perhaps there are elements within human society that have been operating without official sanction." But even as she spoke, Sarah knew it wasn't true. The scope of what was being revealed was too vast, too systematic, too perfectly coordinated to be the work of rogue elements. This was institutional, planned across centuries, involving hundreds of human worlds and millions of human citizens. Her communicator chimed again. This time the message made her blood turn to ice. 3 hours ago, a Devourer war fleet had attacked the human agricultural world of green fields. The planet's population of 2.3 million civilians had no military protection beyond basic planetary shields and emergency evacuation protocols. According to the initial report, The Devourer fleet had consisted of 200 heavy warships, commanded by War Prince Thracax himself, seeking revenge for the humiliation at Hope's End. The attack had been carefully planned to demonstrate that humanity was weak and defenseless when faced with truly overwhelming force. The attack had lasted 14 minutes. When Federation relief ships arrived, they found green fields intact and peaceful. The farms were undamaged. The population safe and going about their daily routines. The only sign that anything unusual had happened was the debris field in orbit, the scattered remains of 200 Devourer warships, and the escape pod containing War Prince Thracax himself. Thracax had been found in a state of complete psychological breakdown, muttering over and over about the Sleepers and the Harvest Moon Protocol, and 300 years of preparation coming to fruition. The surviving Devourer crews described an impossible scenario. As their fleet had approached green fields, the planet's civilian population had simply changed. Farmers had emerged from their fields carrying weapons that shouldn't exist, using technology that outclassed anything in the Federation arsenal. The orbital defense platforms that sensors had registered as simple communication satellites had revealed themselves to be artillery installations capable of firing planet-killer munitions. Most terrifying of all, every human on the planet had moved with the precision of trained soldiers following a battle plan they had rehearsed thousands of times. Children had operated anti-ship weapons with expert efficiency. Elderly farmers had deployed combat tactics that would have impressed veteran military commanders. The entire civilian population had transformed into a perfectly coordinated military machine in a matter of minutes. Ambassador Chen, Chancellor Vex said quietly. What exactly is humanity? Sarah stared at the reports on her communicator, her mind struggling to process what she was learning about her own species. She thought about her husband David back on New Geneva, about their quiet life in a peaceful colony dedicated to helping other species resolve their conflicts. She thought about her training as a diplomat, her genuine belief in nonviolent solutions, her pride in humanity's reputation as galactic peacemakers. How much of her life had been a lie? How much of humanity's peaceful nature was real? And how much was simply an elaborate disguise, hiding something far more dangerous? I don't know, she whispered, and meant it with terrifying sincerity. Across the galaxy, the revelation was spreading like wildfire. Species that had trusted humanity for centuries were discovering that their peaceful friends had been watching, cataloging, and preparing for possibilities that no one had wanted to consider. And in the depths of space, more Devourer fleets were gathering. War Prince Thracax's broken warnings about human capabilities were being dismissed as the ravings of a defeated commander. The Devourer High Command had decided that humanity needed to be taught a lesson about what happened to species that dared to humiliate their warriors. The largest war fleet in Devourer history was being assembled. 5,000 ships, carrying 200 million soldiers. Weapons capable of sterilizing entire star systems, and the absolute determination to prove that no species could stand against the true predators of the galaxy. They were planning to attack Earth directly, and somewhere in the human colonies, ancient protocols were being activated. Sleeper agents who had lived their entire lives believing they were farmers and teachers and shopkeepers were receiving coded transmissions that awakened memories they had never known they possessed. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity's 3 centuries of peace had not been a transformation. It had been preparation. The Devourer war fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system like a plague of metal locusts. 5,000 ships stretched across space in a formation designed to maximize psychological impact. A wall of death approaching the birth world of the galaxy's most beloved peacemakers. War Admiral Krex stood on the bridge of his flagship, confident that this demonstration of overwhelming force would finally prove Devourer supremacy. Begin broadcast on all frequencies, he commanded. Let the humans and their Federation allies witness the price of humiliating the Devourer Empire. The transmission reached Earth within minutes. Across the planet, humans paused in their daily activities to watch the largest war fleet in galactic history approaching their home. Children looked up from their school lessons, farmers set down their tools, artists stopped their work, an entire world holding its breath as death sailed toward them through the void. But something was wrong with their reaction. Ambassador Sarah Chen, monitoring the broadcasts from the Galactic Council Station, expected to see panic. evacuation attempts, desperate calls for Federation assistance. Instead, she watched her people respond with an eerie calm that made her skin crawl. On New Geneva, her husband David stood in their garden, looking up at the sky with an expression she had never seen before. His usual warm smile was gone, replaced by something cold and calculating. Around him, their neighbors were emerging from their homes, and Sarah realized with growing horror that every human on screen looked exactly the same, alert, focused, and utterly unafraid. "David," she whispered to the screen, "what's happening to you?" War Admiral Krex was initially pleased by the lack of panic on Earth. It would make the conquest more efficient if the humans didn't waste time with futile resistance. He ordered his fleet into attack formation, preparing to demonstrate that the galaxy's gentle species would fall like wheat before the scythe. That was when Earth's orbital defense platforms came online. The planet was surrounded by what Federation records listed as communication satellites, research stations, and civilian space habitats. In the space of 30 seconds, every single structure revealed its true nature. Massive weapons systems that had been disguised for centuries uncloaked themselves, showing technological capabilities that surpassed anything in the known galaxy. But Krex was not easily intimidated. He commanded the largest fleet the Devourers had ever assembled, with enough firepower to glass entire star systems. A few hidden defense platforms would not save the humans from their fate. "All ships, commence attack," he ordered. The first wave of Devourer missiles screamed toward Earth's orbital defenses. Krex watched with satisfaction as thousands of planet-killer weapons closed the distance, anticipating the moment when human pacifism would crumble before Devourer might. The weapons never reached their targets. Every missile, every energy beam, every projectile fired by the Devourer fleet simply stopped. They hung motionless in space, held by some form of technology that violated every known law of physics. Then, one by one, they turned around and began flying back toward the ships that had fired them. "What is this?" Krex snarled. "What kind of defensive system?" "War Admiral," his sensor operator called out. "We're detecting massive energy signatures from the inner system. Something is approaching from Earth." On the tactical display, contacts began appearing. Hundreds of them, then thousands, then tens of thousands. Ships were emerging from what appeared to be pocket dimensions, materializing from stealth systems so advanced they had been completely invisible even to Devourer sensors. These were not the peaceful research vessels and civilian transports that Federation records showed in human space. These were warships of a design that hurt the eyes to look at, incorporating technologies that seemed to bend reality around their hulls. They moved with perfect coordination, as if controlled by a single mind, and they radiated a menace that made even Devourer warriors step back from their weapons. At the head of the human fleet came a single vessel that dwarfed even Krex's massive flagship. Its hull bore markings in an ancient script that predated human contact with the galaxy, and its weapon systems were already charging with energies that registered off the scale of Devourer sensors. A communication channel opened, and Krex found himself looking at a human face for the first time, without the gentle mask of diplomacy. The being on screen wore the same features as the peaceful ambassadors he had seen in Federation records, but everything else was different. The eyes held depths of calculated violence that would have impressed a Devourer war chief. The expression carried the weight of someone who had been planning this moment for centuries. "I am Admiral Patricia Zhao of the Human Defense Force," the figure said in a voice that carried quiet authority. "You have made a serious mistake." Krex regained his composure and snarled back. "You cannot intimidate us with tricks and hidden ships. We are the Devourers. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. Your peaceful species will learn to fear us." Admiral Zhao tilted her head slightly, and Krex caught a glimpse of something that made his primitive survival instincts scream warnings. It was a look he had seen before, in the eyes of apex predators studying their prey. "Peaceful?" she said quietly. "Is that what you think we are?" The human ships began moving into attack formation, and Krex realized that everything the galaxy believed about humanity had been a lie. These were not the vessels of a species that had chosen pacifism through moral evolution. These were the ships of natural-born killers who had simply been waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. "Let me tell you what we really are." Admiral Zhao continued. We are the species that crawled out of a gravity well through sheer stubborn determination. We are the survivors of ice ages, plagues, nuclear wars, and every natural disaster our homeworld could throw at us. We are the beings who looked at a universe full of things that could kill us and decided to kill them first. The human fleet spread out, and Krex began to realize that his massive armada was being systematically surrounded by forces he couldn't even properly detect until they were already in position. For 300 years, Admiral Zhao said, we have been watching the galaxy tear itself apart, with primitive conflicts and inefficient violence. We have been studying every species, cataloging every weakness, preparing for the day when someone would force us to stop pretending to be something we are not. Krex's flagship shuddered as something impacted its shields, but his sensors showed no incoming weapons. Somehow, the humans were striking his ships through technologies that his instruments couldn't even register. Do you know what we learned during our centuries of observation? Admiral Zhao asked, her voice never rising above conversational tones, even as devourer ships began exploding around Krex's position. We learned that every species in this galaxy thinks they understand predation. You believe that bigger teeth, stronger armor, and more savage instincts make you dangerous. Another devourer ship vanished in a flash of energies that seemed to unravel its molecular structure. Krex watched his mighty fleet being dismantled with surgical precision by an enemy that fought like a force of nature. But true predators don't need to look dangerous, Admiral Zhao continued. They don't need to roar or display their weapons or intimidate their prey. True predators smile while they study their victims. They learn everything there is to know. They wait patiently for the perfect moment, and when they finally strike, the human ships suddenly accelerated to attack speed, moving with coordination that made Krex's veteran fleet look like amateurs. In the space of minutes, his massive armada was being systematically destroyed by forces that seemed to anticipate every move, counter every strategy, and exploit every weakness with impossible efficiency. They don't just win, Admiral Zhao finished. They win so completely that their prey never even understood what killed them. Krex watched his fleet die around him and realized that the galaxy had made a terrible mistake. Humanity had not evolved beyond their predatory nature. They had refined it into something far more dangerous than raw aggression. They had become patient, intelligent, systematic killers who had spent centuries learning how to destroy every other species in existence. The Devourer Empire had picked a fight with something that made their savage raids look like children playing with toys. As Krex's flagship was disabled by weapons he couldn't even see, he managed one last transmission to the Devourer homeworld. Retreat, he gasped into his communicator. Tell the High Command to retreat from human space immediately. Tell them we were wrong about everything. Tell them. The transmission cut off as his ship was captured by human boarding teams, who moved through Devourer corridors like death itself, systematically neutralizing resistance with methods that would have terrified even Devourer warriors. Across the galaxy, the battle above Earth was being broadcast on every Federation channel. Species that had trusted humanity for centuries watched in stunned horror as their gentle friends revealed themselves to be the most effective military force anyone had ever seen. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat in the council chamber, watching her husband's face on the screen as he calmly directed civilian evacuation procedures while human warships obliterated the largest invasion fleet in galactic history. David moved with the precision of someone who had been trained for this scenario his entire life, coordinating activities with other civilians, who were clearly military specialists, operating under deep cover. How long? Chancellor Vex asked quietly. How long have they been preparing for this? Sarah thought about human history, about the records that showed their homeworld recovering from devastating wars through moral evolution and the choice of peace. She thought about 3 centuries of diplomatic success that now looked like systematic intelligence gathering. She thought about her own career, her genuine belief in nonviolent solutions, and the growing realization that she had been a useful fool in humanity's longest con game. Since the beginning, she whispered. Since the moment we made first contact, they've been studying us, learning how to destroy us, preparing for the day when someone would force them to stop pretending. The Battle of Earth lasted 4 hours. When it ended, the Devourer war fleet had been completely destroyed, except for a handful of ships that Admiral Zhao had allowed to escape. Their crews would carry word back to the Devourer homeworld about what happened when someone tried to threaten humanity. But the real message was being transmitted throughout Federation space by the survivors' terrified testimony. Humanity had never been the galaxy's gentle peacemakers. They had been apex predators wearing sheep's clothing, and now the mask was off. In the weeks that followed, the full scope of humanity's deception began to emerge. Every human colony was revealed to be a forward military base. Every human diplomat had been trained in species-specific combat techniques. Every human civilian had undergone conditioning that could transform them into soldiers at a moment's notice. The peaceful farmers of Greenfields had spent their entire lives rehearsing combat scenarios. The gentle teachers on human education worlds had been collecting psychological profiles on alien children. The kind doctors in human hospitals had been studying xenobiology to identify the most efficient ways to kill every known species. Most disturbing of all, the investigation revealed that humanity's 3 centuries of peaceful conflict resolution had been accomplished through methods that made traditional warfare look humane. Every war they had prevented had involved the surgical elimination of key leaders, the systematic manipulation of political structures, and the deployment of psychological warfare techniques that could drive entire civilizations to abandon violence through pure terror. The galaxy that emerged from this revelation was very different from the one that had existed before. Species that had once looked to humanity for moral guidance now watched human space with fearful respect. Trade agreements included provisions specifically designed to avoid giving humans reasons to feel threatened. Military planning across the galaxy was restructured around the assumption that humanity could eliminate any opposition before it could organize effective resistance. But perhaps strangest of all was humanity's response to their unmasking. Admiral Zhao's public statement was broadcast throughout Federation space, and its tone was one of mild disappointment rather than triumph. "We are sorry that circumstances forced this revelation," she said. "For 3 centuries, we have genuinely hoped that the galaxy could evolve beyond the need for our particular skills. We built our reputation as peacemakers because we truly believed that helping other species resolve conflicts through nonviolence was preferable to the alternatives." Her expression shifted slightly, showing a glimpse of the calculation that lay beneath humanity's diplomatic facade. "But we are not naive. We have always understood that peace is only possible when everyone involved believes that cooperation serves their interests better than aggression. Sometimes that belief requires education." The Federation continued to function, but the dynamic had changed forever. Humanity remained involved in diplomatic solutions to galactic conflicts, but now everyone understood what lay behind their gentle suggestions and patient mediation. When human ambassadors recommended peaceful resolutions to territorial disputes, their recommendations carried the unspoken weight of species that could eliminate entire star systems if their advice was ignored. When human mediators suggested compromise in trade negotiations, both sides understood that failure to reach agreement might result in the kind of technical difficulties that had befallen aggressive factions in the past. Ambassador Sarah Chen returned to her diplomatic duties, but she now approached her work with the knowledge of what humanity really was. She still believed in peaceful solutions to conflicts, still genuinely preferred negotiation to violence, and still took pride in helping other species find common ground. But she also knew that her success as a mediator was based on something far more complex than moral authority. Every species she worked with understood that behind her gentle smile and patient guidance stood the most efficient killing machine the galaxy had ever seen. And perhaps most remarkably, this knowledge made her more effective than ever. When beings understood that cooperation with humanity's peace initiatives was not just morally preferable but also a matter of survival, they discovered remarkable creativity in finding solutions that served everyone's interests. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson about the nature of true predators, and in learning that lesson, they had discovered that sometimes the most effective path to peace was the simple understanding that the alternative was something far worse than any war they could imagine. Humanity had stopped pretending to be gentle. But in doing so, they had created a peace more stable and lasting than any they had achieved through deception. The mask was gone, and everyone was better for its absence. The mask was finally coming off, and nothing would ever be the same.